You are standing in a stone plaza, the air is thick and still. Around you, temples rise higher than any building you have ever seen. Thousands of people once filled this square. Now there is silence, no footsteps, no voices, just limestone, vines, and wind. For centuries, this was one of the most sophisticated cities on Earth. Then, within a few generations, it simply emptied out. This is not a myth. This is not a legend about aliens or curses. Scientists have spent decades piecing together what actually happened, and the answer is more unsettling than fiction, because it is real, and because it looks a lot like a warning. Let's go back to the beginning. Between roughly 250 and 900 AD, the Maya built one of the largest urban civilizations in the ancient world. Cities like Tikal, Calakmul, and Copan held populations in the tens of thousands. Some estimates put the total population of the Maya lowlands at over 10 million people at its peak. That is a staggering number for a region covered in dense tropical jungle. You have to picture what that actually meant: engineered causeways connecting cities, towering pyramids aligned with the stars, reservoirs carved into bedrock to store rainwater for entire populations, a writing system so complex it took modern scholars decades to fully decode. This was not a primitive society, this was one of the most advanced civilizations of its time. And then, over roughly 100 years, it fell apart. City after city stopped building monuments, royal dynasties disappeared from the historical record, populations dropped by as much as 90% in some regions, construction halted mid-project, palaces were abandoned with furniture still inside them. So what actually happened? For a long time, nobody knew for certain. Early theories ranged from foreign invasion to disease to simple societal collapse from within, but the real breakthrough came from an unlikely place: caves. In 2012, archaeologist Douglas Kennett and a team of researchers published a study in the journal Science. They had analyzed a stalagmite from a cave called Balam in Belize. A stalagmite is a mineral formation that grows on a cave floor, layer by layer, over thousands of years. The same way tree rings record a tree's age, each layer captures a chemical signature of the rainfall from that exact year. What Kennett's team found was extraordinary. The stalagmite recorded a period of unusually high rainfall right before the Maya's population boom, followed by a series of increasingly severe droughts, exactly matching the timeline of the collapse. This wasn't a guess anymore, this was climate data, locked in stone, decades before anyone thought to look for it. But rainfall alone doesn't collapse a civilization. 10 million people don't just disappear because of a dry season, so researchers dug deeper, literally. At Tikal, archaeologist Vernon Scarborough spent years studying the city's water infrastructure. He discovered a network of massive reservoirs, some capable of holding hundreds of millions of gallons of water. This was not an accident, this was deliberate engineering, built by a civilization that understood exactly how fragile their water supply was in a landscape with no permanent rivers or lakes. Here's the twist: the very system that made the Mayas' success possible also made their downfall catastrophic when it failed. A city of 50,000 people crammed into a jungle with no natural water source is a marvel of engineering during good years. During a multi-decade drought, it becomes a trap. Researcher Lisa Lucero has argued that the Mayas' reliance on centralized water storage meant that when the rains failed for long enough, the reservoirs simply couldn't keep up, and when water failed, everything connected to it failed too. Crop yields collapsed, trade routes broke down, political authority, which had been built on the king's supposed ability to bring rain through ritual, lost its legitimacy in the eyes of the people. Think about that for a moment. Maya rulers claimed divine power over rainfall, elaborate ceremonies, bloodletting rituals, and temple dedications were performed specifically to appease rain gods like Shak. For generations, when the rains came, that belief was reinforced, but when the drought stretched on for years, then decades, the foundation of political power itself began to crack. So picture a single family living through this, a farmer in the outskirts of a city like Copan, watching the maize fields turn brown for the third year running, watching the reservoir levels drop below the stone markings that had never been crossed in his grandfather's lifetime, hearing that the king's rituals produced nothing, watching neighbors pack up and walk north, toward regions that still had reliable water. He doesn't know he is living through the Maya collapse, he just knows that staying might mean starving, and leaving might mean survival. That is how civilizations actually end, not with a single dramatic event, but with millions of individual decisions to leave, made by people just trying to feed their families. And here is the counterintuitive part: the piece that surprises most people: the Maya did not go extinct, their civilization did not vanish, their cities emptied, but their descendants didn't disappear, they adapted. Millions of Maya people live in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras today, speaking Mayan languages that trace directly back to these ancient kingdoms. What collapsed wasn't a people. It was a specific political and urban system that had become too rigid, too centralized, and too dependent on a fragile water supply to survive a prolonged climate shift. This is where the story stops being ancient history and starts becoming uncomfortably familiar. Modern researchers, including climate scientists studying tree rings and lake sediments across Mesoamerica, have confirmed that the droughts affecting the Maya lowlands during this period were the most severe in over 2,000 years, not typical dry spells, multi-decade mega-droughts, the kind that modern water infrastructure has never actually been tested against. Today, cities across the world depend on centralized water systems just as complex, and in some cases just as fragile, as the reservoirs at Tikal, reservoirs behind dams, aquifers being pumped faster than they can refill, political systems whose legitimacy quietly depends on the assumption that the taps will keep running and the harvests will keep coming. The Maya weren't foolish, they were not primitive people who failed to see a threat coming. They built genuinely brilliant engineering to solve a genuinely difficult problem. In one of the most sophisticated societies of the ancient world, their downfall wasn't a lack of intelligence, it was the simple, brutal math of climate variability meeting a system with no room left to adapt. So the next time you turn on a faucet without a second thought, remember that a city like Tikal supported 50,000 people for centuries doing exactly the same thing, engineering their environment to make water reliable, and remember that reliability, once it starts to fail past a certain threshold, doesn't fail gradually, it fails all at once. And the people living through it rarely see the ending coming until they are already living inside it. You are standing in a stone plaza, the temples are still here, the stone is still here, what's missing isn't mystery, and it isn't magic, it's water, and it's the fragile systems every civilization, including yours, quietly depends on to keep the silence from ever arriving.